Danny Sullivan, racing driver, 36 years old, single, one of the best, one of a handful of men who each year share the glory of the world's major races. He has won the biggest of them all, the Indy 500. If there is a mold for top racing drivers, Danny fits it. The sharp eyes, the reflexes, the natural aggression, the self-confidence. This he shares with other drivers. But there is something else, a restless energy for a life outside the cockpit, an appetite for living his whole life as much on the limit as he is when he's racing. So he pilots a helicopter, acts in a television commercial, develops business opportunities. And the delightful thing about Danny is that the more famous he becomes, the more accessible he makes himself to all of us. Danny Sullivan lives a life of great diversity, and he lives it at full speed, his sure hand steering his course. He is different, and he loves it. He is a man apart, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Take me to LaGuardia Airport, would you please?
Okay. Where are you going to today?
I'm going out to San Francisco. Then I'm going to drive down to Monterey. It's for the races. The Indy cars are going to compete out there this weekend. You know, Mario Andretti, the Unsers, Danny Sullivan.
Hey, that sounds great. Well, I'll get you there as fast as I can.
Thanks. These New York cab drivers have some life. Dodging potholes and pedestrians, trying not to get squeezed out of the way from the buses. You know, it would make quite a good apprenticeship for a racing driver. Come to think of it, Danny Sullivan, the Indy winner, when he was a kid, came up here to New York from Louisville, Kentucky, to seek his fortune, so to speak. He worked in many different odd jobs. He was a waiter at one of the restaurants, and he also drove a cab, just like this one. It took 12 years for Danny Sullivan to go from taxi cabs to Indy cars, but only 3 years from the moment he reached racing's major league, he won the Indy 500. At the start, the race looked as if it would belong to Mario Andretti, but by mid-race, Danny Sullivan had closed in, and suddenly, as the two raced nose to tail, Danny made a move that will be part of racing legend for generations to come. A move to the inside, a pass into the lead, and then he spun. Incredibly, he didn't hit anything, nor did Danny lose his composure. Laps later, showing an instinct for theater, he chose the same spot to pass Andretti again, this time for good.
When I won Indy, really, my whole career, everything came together. That was the culmination of everything that I had worked for. But it really took me 1 or 2 months after Indianapolis to realize what it all meant.
Danny was 35 when he won Indy, having begun his racing career later in life than most of his rivals. Unlike the Andrettis or the Unsers, families which have racing in their blood, the Sullivans were prospering in the construction business in Louisville, Kentucky. Family life, stability, that was what counted. But not to their son, Danny. He wanted adventure. After 18 months in New York, Danny put even more distance between himself and home with a move to England, where at the age of 21, he had his first racing experience at a school for would-be racing drivers. It changed his life. After deciding to make racing his career, Danny suffered one setback after another. I know because I got several letters from him from Europe in those dark days. One of the problems was that the European team managers didn't think an American was tough enough to be a champion. Danny got used to being known as the Yank, the man who was out of step with the system. Having no money, he learned how to raise it. He inspired loyalty and had the knack of making himself valuable to sponsors whether or not he was winning. He raced in Europe for 9 years before coming back to America. By then, he was 30, a seasoned veteran. But over here, where he was almost unknown, he was perceived as a rookie, a good-looking newcomer with prodigious skills. All at once, Danny was hot. Coincidentally, racing in America, and IndyCar racing in particular, was coming of age. It was vibrant, challenging, and expanding rapidly under a new sanctioning body named CART. The men behind CART, such as car owner Roger Penske, had experience and savvy, plus a far-sighted view of where the sport should go. They developed a mix of traditional oval races like Indianapolis with races in parks and city streets, plus road races out in the country like this one at Laguna Seca. The cars, built mostly of lightweight materials like magnesium and carbon fiber, are powered by 700 horsepower turbocharged engines and sucked to the track by an aerodynamic principle called ground effect. They are expensive, beautiful in a lethal sort of way, and very hard to control. CART drivers are among America's best. Chain-smoking Bobby Rahal won Indy the year after Danny. Mario Andretti, whose will to win is undiminished after 30 years behind the wheel. And Rick Mears, the master oval racer who is Danny's teammate on the Roger Penske team. Now thrusting his red and white car through the dips and twists of Laguna Seca, Danny was on the move. Fifth in the opening laps. He was fourth by mid-race, then third. This was his final pit stop for fuel. His fortunes for these few crucial seconds in the hands of his crew. 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds, uphill and back into the action. All at once, Rick Mears into the wall and out for the day. To the driver, danger isn't something you think much about. And crashes, well, they're going to happen to the other guy. But when it's your teammate that crashes, that's a little too close to home. And if you're Danny's parents, it makes the race that much tougher to watch.
I'm getting better at it. I've been able to stand it. It's nerve-wracking. I mean, it's scary.
I like the road races, or have gotten a little more accustomed to those than I have the oval, certainly.
Danny in second now, behind Bobby Rahal and ahead of Michael Andretti. And then it was over. Just behind Victory Circle, Danny stepping from his car, shaking hands with Michael, and sharing a private moment with respected rivals before the bedlam and the champagne.
Really, after the second place finish at Laguna, there's a tremendous amount of jubilation. It had been a good race. We had come from behind. It had been a hard-fought battle. But to the same extent, I like to win. And I didn't win the race, and second place is second place.
The season was nearly at its end. As Danny's hat soared into the crowd, so did his mind shift from California to Florida, to the last race of the year, Miami. In Miami, it was raining. The start was delayed for an hour while we waited for the pavement to dry. Racing, which is relatively new to the city, has been enthusiastically received, and a large crowd lined the track, which winds through Tamiami Park. Danny, as usual, attracted attention. His father and mother had come. As the sun broke through the clouds, his car was brought to the grid. There are emotional rhythms that you never truly grow immune to if you have raced. The tension before the start, the slight relief as the cars move away on the pace lap. Then you're settling yourself in the cockpit, digging in, bracing for the long and wearying race ahead, knowing that its demands will drain every last bit of your energy. And then suddenly, if you are Danny Sullivan, your car falters, and your hand is in the air, warning the others that you're slowing. And now your car is dead under you, and you are coasting silently for the pits, with all that energy in you and nothing to do with it.
It's one of those things, it's just devastating. Although I will say I'd rather break down on the first 2 laps than the last 2 laps of the race.
So you put on your mask, the one with the smile on it, and sign some autographs. And maybe, if you are Danny Sullivan, you think back to what happened in this Miami race exactly 1 year before. The action had begun within seconds of the start. Mario Andretti, charging up the inside, locked his brakes, couldn't turn, tangled wheels with Emerson Fittipaldi as both cars slid wide into the hapless Roberto Guerrero. 3 cars out, and moments later, it was 6 as Raul Boesel, his turbocharger flaming, spun and was hit by both Michael Andretti and Kevin Kogan. Bobby Rahal emerged the early leader. Danny was running 4th. At three-quarters distance, Ray Hall, still leading, had a slow pit stop, leaving Sullivan pressuring the blue and white car of Jan Lammers for the lead. Lammers, a Dutchman, was new to kart racing, but had extensive experience in Formula One. In the S's, Danny started inside Lammers, then thought better of it. Moments later, Lammers, apparently intimidated, left room for Danny, and briefly the two were side by side. But Lammers, better placed for the next turn, retained the lead. At the end of the same lap, both men pitted. Sullivan, Lammers, their pit crews making the difference now, and it was Sullivan pulling away first out of the Penske pits and into the lead. Now it was Sullivan, Lammers, and Bobby Rahal closing up in third as the three leaders wound through the S's. A lap later, and the intervals between the cars had grown. Danny was pulling away. Overextended, Lammers spun and dropped from contention, while Rahal, who had led for so long earlier, emerged on Danny's tail, driving with everything he knew. But on this day, it wasn't to be enough. Danny, driving exactly the same car in which 5 months before he had won the Indy 500, began pulling away. At the checkered flag, the race was his. Miami and Danny Sullivan. Any driver will, I suppose, seem to be linked in a way to a city in which he has scored a major success. But in the case of this town and Danny, the connection runs a little bit deeper. Miami is, in some strange way, the mirror of the man. Consider the architecture, sleek and trendy, or the nightlife, fast and fancy. The Miami image is high profile, a vacation mecca which beckons tourists from around the world. And it's all made to look so easy, with the machinery that makes it click, the sharp managerial minds, the hard work kept out of sight. And so it is with Danny. Danny, you make a point of showing yourself to the outside world as a relaxed, easy-going sort of guy, don't you?
Well, that's a little bit of the appearance, but you know, it's very tough doing everything like this, and all the traveling and late nights and the rent-a-cars and the hotels. But I struggled for so many years, and when the success came, this was all part of the package. And you know, I love it. I wouldn't trade any of it.
21, Mark. The Penske hangar at the Reading Airport becomes the location for the shooting of a public service announcement starring Danny. When you become a public figure, and Danny's Indy win and the way it was promoted made him that, there are obligations that go along with being a celebrity. Some would be intimidated by being on camera in a situation like this. Danny enjoys it.
That away for the moment, just to see if I can remember. You know, it's funny, I never really thought about acting or being an actor, but then as things went on, opportunities started to present themselves, and of course doing the Miami Vice with Don Johnson, that was a great experience. It's also a lot more difficult than I think people think. There's a lot of standing around, a lot of waiting, but then you really have to focus on what they're telling you, even if it's some body movement or some tone in your voice in some particular sentence. And there's a lot of concentration that goes into it, and I think there's a lot of similarities with the racing. I think if my concentration level hadn't been so good from the racing, I would have had a lot of problems with the acting.
A typical week in Danny's life is usually crowded with engagements, and the person who has to keep it all straight for him is his secretary, Becky Brown.
Keeping track of Danny is difficult. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's very easy. If during race season he's in a given place, it's very easy to know where he is. Mostly though, Danny's on the road 5 days out of the week, and so it's plane reservations, it's hotel reservations. It's just very difficult, and the only way I really know where he is when he picks up the telephone and gives me a call. I know basically where he's supposed to be, but if he's actually there, I'll be surprised. After Reading, he went by New York, flew into New York, and took a look at the Town and Country shoot. The layout is just incredible. It's some of the best stuff we've ever seen with Danny, because it's different. What we see normally with Danny when he's racing is he's in his uniform, he's in the pits, he's here, he's there. They took all aspects of his racing. They used things like tires, and they used a trophy, and they used the car, and they used Danny in his uniform. There's the girls there, which is an added touch, and of course Danny photographs well, and so these were fabulous pictures of him. A very important part of Danny's life is his appearances for his sponsors. The fans are there, and there's such a mixture of people that come to see him, which just fascinates me.
And we're drawing one. Yeah, go ahead. Bring it over here and let's find out who it is.
It's got my name on it.
It does?
Yes, so I guess I get the free trip.
Okay.
No.
Oh, he's good looking, yeah.
I'm just real excited that he's here in town and I'm getting a chance to get his autograph.
Danny has signed several hundred autographs so far here today. It's the sort of job that many drivers would dread. He seems to enjoy it.
Thanks, John. Good luck.
Danny?
Just a second.
Do you find when people come to you in line like this, are they nervous when they meet you?
Some of them are nervous, or a little bit in awe, I think, but I just try to kind of talk to them and put them at ease and make them feel comfortable.
Did you make one up for my brother too, Danny?
Danny? What a name. And what I find usually in a place like a mall is it's usually mothers and stuff that say, "Man, we got our sons or we got this and so forth."
What do you think happens to the autograph pictures when they get back to people's houses?
Well, I think there are quite a few of them that are very serious collectors of autographs, and I've seen collections where people have got them back 20 years and they've got every driver and they've got all this. They keep them.
Danny doesn't have a home in the conventional sense, and if he gets a few days off, he's likely to spend it wherever is most convenient. But he does keep an apartment in Aspen for skiing, snowmobiling, and just plain enjoying that most glamorous of all winter resorts. With all his zest for life, he is also immensely disciplined, and fitness isn't left to chance. Wherever he is, he will find a gym to work out in, and time to do it, even if it means getting up at 5 a.m. Ironically, if there is a place the well-traveled Mr. Sullivan might truly call home, it is the cockpit of his racing car, here arriving in Los Angeles from England, where it was built. In a Penske-owned dealership nearby, Danny's crew completes the car's final assembly before a shakedown session at a desert track near Willow Springs, California. It's a strange thing to be around a racing driver as he prepares to go out in his car, to see him dressed like a gladiator, to listen as his conversation becomes more distant and finally shuts you out. He is about to become the creator of action. He is about to be a participant. And us, well, we are left merely to be his audience. It is an act of arrogance, really, but somehow we don't mind. More likely, we will worry about him, aware of the risks that he is about to confront. He is solitary now, but not lonely. Danny Sullivan is about to partake of a sensation so irresistible, so immediate, so exciting that it has become indispensable to the inner workings of his soul. Already, in anticipation and seeing in his mind's eye the upcoming action, his heartbeat is quickened, his senses are sharpened, his mind clear.
For me, particularly, with all the traveling that I do, with all the promotions, with all the shows and the TV and this appearance and that appearance, this is the time for me when I can get away from it all and get back to the reality and the basics of driving the race car. But the special feeling that you get when it all comes together, when all those things that we've done, all those things we've tried, and at the end of the day we put them all on the car, and the car is magic and really working good. There's no better feeling than having it all work and doing some sensationally quick time.
These are the moments Danny lives for, the moments that give focus to the travel, the appearances, the autographs, the pre-dawn workouts, his life in the public eye. Racing, it is what he does best. This is Long Beach, California, the site of the first IndyCar race of the year. The season, which doubtless will be filled with high drama, is about to unfold. In Indianapolis, it's just around the corner. Danny Sullivan has had the winter to think about what's ahead and to imagine for himself a starring role, both on the track and off.
It's that time of year again. Indy's upon us. Everything's looking great. It's going to be a fabulous year, and we're going to be really strong.
At Indianapolis, you know, the spin day, I was watching it on a closed circuit TV because I knew he was getting ready to try to pass Mario. And, you know, when it happened, my only thought was, how bad's it going to be? Because I was sure he was in the wall. And afterwards, after the race, the guy came up to me and he said, I didn't know who you were at the time, but I was standing behind you when Danny spun, and he said your face was the color of your shirt. And I had a white shirt on, of course.
It's a strange feeling. First time I ever saw him sign an autograph, it really kind of took me by surprise. I've gotten used to it now, and I really don't think too much, and I don't think of him as a celebrity. When I read about it and hear people say that he's recognized on the street here and street there, that surprises me, but I don't think of him as a celebrity.
I have had so many people ask me what it's like working for Danny Sullivan, and their first reaction, it's got to be exciting. And there is. It's very definitely is exciting because the world of racing is exciting for those of us outside of it. But basically, it's like working with anyone else. He has his up times and his down times, and fortunately, we're very good friends, which makes it that much easier because when you're just working with one person, there is no buffer. And so it's not like I've got somebody else I can scream to. But it's a lot of fun. It really is, because it's not your basic day-to-day job.
Really, it's been a great life, and I wouldn't trade any of it, and I love every minute of it.